moment.
Focuses the attention of the President of the United States.
Many Americans are distraught at the rollback of some of the protections.
They've gotten poorer and poorer.
It is about helping people who are dying.
Being a Palestinian is a responsibility.
Racism still endures. The xenophobia still endures.
Throughout history, we have acclaimed as heroes men and women who have overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. Those who have left their mark on society by conquering a dreaded disease, human injustice, or menacing foe have earned our respect. We've built statues to honor and remember those who gave their lives for a greater cause. But over the last several decades, many Americans have turned to amateur and professional sports for their heroes. We seem to derive inspiration, hope, and courage from athletes who can run faster, jump higher, and hit a baseball farther than we can. Young and old, black and white, rich and poor, we all revere the accomplished athlete. We admire, cheer, imitate, worship, and idolize those who play sports well.
Money's gotta be the shoes. Shoes.
And now, in the 90s, we buy our favorite athlete's shoes, jersey, cereal, sport drink, and trading card. Are today's high-profile athletes worthy of our adulation and attention? Should children emulate these media-savvy superstars? Does athletic ability alone make one a hero? In this program, we'll examine America's fascination with sports and athletes. Why do we accord those with outstanding athletic skills more fame and wealth than those who fight disease, or help young children learn, or keep our world safe? Are our expectations of athletes just too high? Competition is as old as civilization. There have always been contests to determine who was bigger, faster, stronger. But sports, as entertainment, began to flourish in the United States during the Industrial Revolution. Americans were moving from farms to cities and towns. Immigrants flocked to this country, seeking freedom and steady jobs. With few physical frontiers left to cross, Americans increasingly used sports for relaxation, escape, camaraderie, and challenge. Watching a game and rooting for a favorite team gave Americans a reason to talk and cheer. A game, whether it be baseball, basketball, or football, united people of all races, religions, nationalities, ages, sexes, and incomes. Yet it also drove them apart. Sports were, and probably still are, an escape from the often mundane routine of work and family. Sports also embodied characteristics and values Americans treasured: hard work, loyalty, teamwork, perseverance, and commitment. And the athletes we admired: Babe Ruth, Joe DiMaggio, Jesse Owens, Knute Rockne, Red Grange, Wilma Rudolph, reflected qualities we sought in ourselves: confidence, dignity, grace, and skill. Even though we now know some of our most beloved sports heroes had more than their share of troubles, and were not quite the people we'd hoped they were, we still expect athletes to be special. We want them to be exemplary citizens both on and off the field, to be tough competitors, yet gentle human beings, to be exuberant winners, yet gracious losers. We want their efforts to symbolize our everyday struggles. In other words, we want them to be perfect. One former athlete thinks that is asking too much. Tom McMillen, who served 3 consecutive terms in the U.S. House of Representatives from the 4th Congressional District of Maryland, now co-chairs the President's Council on Physical Fitness and Sports.
I used to go in front of the steps of the Capitol with young school groups. When I was a congressman, I'd ask them what they wanted to become when they grew up, and these were generally elementary kids, and they would say they all want to become, Michael Jordan or a movie star, Julia Roberts. None of them ever wanted to be a congressman. Very few of them wanted to be a doctor, and occasionally a couple lawyers snuck in there. But the problem is that that value system is really bad. It creates almost a delusional value system, because a lot of kids now think they are going to become Michael Jordan. I mean, they have about as much a chance of being Michael Jordan as being the first person on Mars. It's just not going to happen.
McMillen's athletic credentials are as impeccable as his professional and academic achievements. A three-time All-American in basketball at the University of Maryland, McMillen was a member of the 1972 U.S. Olympic team and a 1974 first-round draft choice of the Buffalo Braves. He played 11 years in the National Basketball Association. An academic All-American as well, McMillen was awarded a Rhodes Scholarship and received Master of Arts degrees in politics, philosophy, and economics from Oxford University in 1978.
Most athletes don't understand the obligation that comes from being who they are. Now, that's a broad statement, because there are some who really do. And the ones that do, you have to give them wonderful accolades, because they go into their communities and really make an impact and do some wonderful things. But unfortunately, they make so much money now that it's the ratio. I always wonder about a nation that can pay a professional athlete, 30, 40, 50 times, maybe 200 times what they pay the President of the United States. That's always concerns me, whether we have our value structures right.
Alan Page, a former All-American football player at the University of Notre Dame and an All-Pro with the Minnesota Vikings, is now a justice of the Minnesota State Supreme Court. He echoes McMillen's statements.
I think there's a difference between a role model and a hero. And I think athletes make very good heroes, because they're somebody we can look to who, at least our perception is, they're different from us. They do things that are exceptional on the athletic field. Role models, it seems to me, ought to be people who we know, who we can touch, who we can see, who we can understand, who are like us, and who we can aspire to be like.
Although many professional athletes have always earned a decent living, some of today's salaries are astronomical. In 1869, Harry Wright, a player and manager of the Cincinnati Red Stockings professional baseball team, made 7 times the average worker's salary. When Babe Ruth was asked why he made more than President Herbert Hoover, he replied, "I had a better year." Yet, even in the late 60s and early 70s, professional athletes, while handsomely rewarded, were still like us. They lived in our neighborhoods, sent their children to our schools, and even took jobs in the off-season to make ends meet. But since then, salaries have exploded. In 1994, the average Major League Baseball player earned 50 times the salary of the average American. Athletes, with their multi-million-dollar contracts and endorsement deals, are now among the richest people in America. Gene Corrigan is commissioner of the Atlantic Coast Conference, an athletic league comprised of 9 universities in the Southeast.
When you go through something like we've been through recently with the baseball strike, where you've got these people that are making $7–10 million a year and they're striking, I don't know what they're striking about. Nobody does. It's not like the old United Mine Workers under John L. Lewis.
Television has also had a huge impact on both professional and college sports. Cable and broadcast networks have paid enormous amounts of money for the rights to televise certain sporting events. Murray Sperber, who teaches English at Indiana University and has written 2 books about college sports, discusses the effects of television on college sports.
In the TV era, particularly with ESPN and kind of wall-to-wall televising of sports, they're year-round. And as a result, the money is so much larger than ever before, and the stakes are so much higher, and coaches make so much more and put athletes into much more intensive programs, training programs, weight, watching tape, the whole thing. that it's harder and harder for athletes to get a meaningful college education and to even live as regular athletes. I mean, they're media stars.
Because of the television exposure, sports and athletes are scrutinized more closely by the media. In the past, sports writers were often cheerleaders for their local teams. They rarely reported on the private lives of the athletes the American public adored. Athletes could drink, gamble, and carouse, and fans were oblivious to their outlandish behavior. But today, the indiscretions of athletic superstars make big headlines, and the American public has come to accept it. Dick Vitale is a former basketball coach at the University of Detroit and for the Detroit Pistons in the National Basketball Association. He is now a sports broadcaster for ABC and ESPN.
The bottom line is, as to what was asked, is the situation, when you're talking about controversy and you're talking about people that do things wrong, that's going to be a headline. That's going to be the story. Nobody wants to write about David Robinson helping some kids, going to youth centers and doing all of that. Nobody cares about that, basically, except David and Grant Hill. I mean, I could go on. There are a lot of great guys, Joe Dumars, that are playing this game, who are beautiful people in all sports, but we don't hear a lot about them because all we want to do is focus on the guy that makes the headline, who does something. Because you know what? I think people like reading that. I think people love reading that kind of nonsense.
Athletes have always endorsed products, but nowadays many professional sports stars make more money from their marketing contracts and licensing agreements than from their salaries. Athletes pitch everything from fast food to batteries to cars to underwear. And while college athletes are not allowed to endorse products, their coaches sign lucrative deals with athletic shoe companies to supplement their incomes. Sperber thinks college players are beginning to resent the double standard.
Nobody tunes in North Carolina to see Dean Smith's wingtip shoes. You know, they want to see the players, and it happens the players are wearing the Nike swoosh. And Nike, of course, designs their shoes, so their shoes are very recognizable on TV. But Dean Smith's making $500,000 a year from Nike. Now, Jerry Stackhouse is not making a dime out of that. And increasingly, as I've talked to college players, they are very angry with this system, and they feel they're being ripped off. So I see the players, in a sense, wanting to be paid and putting more and more pressure, and I see this professionalization coming.
Whether we like it or not, we still look to sports to provide heroes and role models. And while many athletes have fallen from the pedestal where we placed them, others are still worthy of our respect and admiration. Chris Zorich plays defensive tackle for the National Football League's Chicago Bears. His story rivals a plot line from the latest movie of the week. Growing up on the south side of Chicago, Zorich used sports as a way to stay out of trouble, obtain an education, and help his family.
The whole aspect and the part of my life that I felt was important because of athletics was the fact that I was able to gain confidence. I was able to learn to work as a team. I was also able to build very special relationships. But that also carried over into into academics, where I understood that at a certain time I would get home from practice, I would have to study, and I wound up becoming more disciplined in my homework and in my school because of my involvement with football.
Zorich and his mother had lots of love, but little money to sustain them as he was growing up. College tuition was not in their budget. But because he could play football, he was awarded a scholarship to the University of Notre Dame. As a senior, his team played in the Orange Bowl. Although the Irish lost by 1 point to Colorado, Zorich turned in an incredible performance, perhaps the best of his collegiate career, and he was named the Defensive Player of the game. He called his mother late that night, as he always did, to share the anguish of losing and the pride of playing well. When he returned home to their apartment the next morning, Zorich found his mother dead of a heart attack. That experience and his dedication to his mother's memory has fueled his commitment to his community. Zorich, who once said he would pay the Chicago Bears to allow him to play football for them, established the Christopher Zorich Foundation in 1993 to provide a scholarship at his alma mater, Notre Dame. For every tackle and sack he and the Fighting Irish football team make, Zorich donates $97, his Bears jersey number, to the fund. He also founded Care to Share, a food program that has fed over 3,000 people.
I was on the receiving end as a young kid of going to the food pantries and the food shelters to pick up food, and I always promised myself if I could ever help anybody else out, I would. And I don't want people to come to me, we come to them. We serve 97 families 3 times a year, and then one time a year we do 197 families. Again, 97 being my jersey number, and we do the 197 at Thanksgiving.
Zorich also delivers fresh flower corsages to many women's shelters in the Chicago area. He also speaks to grammar and high school students and challenges them to do 1 hour of community service. Zorich knows he's a hero, a role model for many youngsters. And while he didn't seek out the responsibility, he accepts it.
I have rarely said that, hey, I want to be a role model, or hey, you know, I'm the role model, kids watch me. I'm not perfect. I think there are very few people out there who aren't perfect. I'm just in a situation where maybe these young kids can relate to me, or maybe they admire the things I do on the field as a professional athlete. And what I'm trying to do is, I understand the fact that these young kids are looking up to me.
Charles Barkley, a professional basketball player for the NBA's Phoenix Suns, received a lot of media attention for saying, "I am not a role model." But American children do look to professional athletes for inspiration. They hang posters of athletes in their rooms, they wear jersey replicas of their favorite players, and they buy the shoes their favorite athletes endorse. Dick Vitale thinks professional athletes need to think twice about their impact on children's lives.
Many of these guys don't understand all the little things they did to get to the top of the mountain. They have a tendency to forget. And it really, really bothers me because they are role models. They don't want to buy that. Sure, the real role model is mom and it's dad and it's at home. But don't tell me that that little kid growing up who loves sports, his eyes don't get like this when he gets near a Michael Jordan or a Charles Barkley or people of that stature. I agree with Barkley that the responsibility belongs in the home. I mean, you're responsible for raising your child, but I still think when you're making the mega dollars and you are in the public's limelight, there comes a responsibility.
Perhaps because of their so-called amateur status, Olympic athletes are often held to higher standards than those in professional sports. We expect them to be purer, less tainted, less cynical. They compete, at least in our eyes, for love of their sport and their country. They seek to grab the gold, not a fortune. They train for years for one shot at glory. Their fame, and therefore marketing capability, is often fleeting when their sport may only attract primetime television coverage once every 4 years. Olympians' lifestyles and private lives are not front-page news and daily fodder for the media. Speed skater Bonnie Blair has won more gold medals, 5 to be exact, than any other woman in American history. She claimed the top prize at the 1988 Winter Olympics in Calgary, the 1992 Winter Games in Albertville, and the 1994 Winter Olympics in Lillehammer.
If I wanted to get into a sport and try to make money out of it, I definitely wouldn't have picked the sport of speed skating. I do realize there are a few Olympic athletes, amateur athletes, that are able to make money after the fact or after they've had the success. And luckily enough, I have been one of those. But I knew that in the very beginning. And you know, I know that there's only those select few that maybe get those financial opportunities afterwards. But I didn't get involved in the sport to make money. That wasn't my idea. I got in it because I loved what I did.
Blair, the youngest of 6 children, started skating when she was 2. Over the years, she has come to understand and accept her status as a role model.
When I look at and think about role models, I do like to really go back to my family, and I was lucky that I had a great, strong one. I realize not everybody always has that, and I guess that's when it's kind of nice to know that you have other, you know, athletes maybe to look at, or actors, or what have you, but you also have to realize that we're also humans too.
Blair, like Zorich, feels an obligation to give back, to support the sport and community that has been such an integral part of her life. Although she recently retired from competition, the 1994 Sports Illustrated Sportswoman of the Year doesn't intend to turn her back on speed skating.
Speed skating, I don't think will really ever leave my life. It's really given me so much, and I have so many great memories for it. There's no bad parts there. So I know I want to try to be able to give back. I want to stay involved in our sport, probably a little bit on a coaching end. I've also been on our board of directors for quite a few years as an athlete's representative, and I hope to stay in that position to try to keep the sport going on an uphill climb.
Sports have always taught us about teamwork, competition, winning and losing. Gene Corrigan, a former athletic director at Washington and Lee, the University of Virginia, and the University of Notre Dame, thinks those lessons still apply.
Things stay the same, things change. As I see, my recognition of athletics now is that it really hasn't changed that much. The dollars have changed, the visibility has changed, there's more attention. Final Four, national championships, those things are all fine, and a very elite group of people get to take part in that. But there are thousands and thousands, probably millions of young people playing athletics in this country that are having an absolutely great time doing it.
Corrigan also recognizes that athletes and coaches, whether appropriate or not, are role models for young people. He's trying to teach athletes in his conference the responsibility and commitment of community service. The Atlantic Coast Conference has developed Operation Outreach, a multifaceted program that encourages college athletes to volunteer their time to help young people.
Our focus has been in the junior high and under group, is because that's the age where youngsters begin to make bad decisions. And if they have some role models to look up to, it can make a big difference in their life. We all have had role models all along the way. I had somebody that and even as an adult, I had people that affected my life because they became a role model for me. I liked the way they handled themselves. I liked the way they did things. And that's the obligation that I think that we have to our communities, our institutions have. Our communities support us in so many ways that we really need to give back to them.
Although he's doing his best to teach college athletes how to be role models, even Corrigan admits athletes should not be the ones we automatically trust.
Well, I think athletes probably get more attention and more idolatry than they deserve, because there are other people in the world that are doing things that are a whole lot more important than playing games.
Sports writer Lisa Luciano, who covers skating for the New York Times, couldn't agree more.
I think we're making the mistake of thinking that because they are exemplary athletes, they're dynamic human beings. Sometimes the two things go together, and sometimes they don't. And I think if we could just separate those two ideas and expect a certain standard of behavior on the ice, or when they're competing or representing themselves as an athlete, and leave the rest alone. I mean, we wouldn't want those standards for our own lives. If we had to make a report to our employers of what we did on our own time, and it would affect our ability to keep our jobs, we wouldn't be too happy with that. That's what we do to athletes.
Yet Luciano understands why Americans look to athletes as role models and heroes.
There's something about sports that has glamour and excitement, and as I said, we assume that if you're good at a sport, you're good in some other way. And I think that's unfair, not only to the athletes themselves, but we're setting ourselves up for disappointment. They can't possibly be exactly what we want them to be.
Luciano has seen the consequences of doing just that.
I think we do put them on this pedestal, and then there's only one place for them to go, down. And it's kind of scary when you think of our priorities, that someone who is trying to cure a fatal disease is basically ignored. Someone who runs into a burning building, someone who's educating the future of our country. All these people are just expected to do their job without any kind of attention whatsoever. someone can run a 100-yard dash faster than someone else, and suddenly this makes them spectacular in some way. I think the mistake is what they do is not heroic. The way they behave may be, but the two don't always have to go together, and I wish we could just separate that somehow.
Alan Page holds a similar view, but he thinks athletes should be classified as entertainers, not role models.
We have to remember that athletics are entertainment, that athletes come on television, they do their jobs, they perform, they play. It's very exciting. The heroes who are teachers, who are nurses, who are those everyday people who really make this country work, we don't glamorize because we have the sense that what they do is mundane, when in fact what they do is far, far more important.
Page, of course, is right. Our role models and heroes should be people who significantly contribute to the health and welfare of our society. We should emulate those who struggle against injustice, fight disease and poverty, and shelter our children. But the facts remain. In this country, we spend billions of dollars a year on sports and its related products. Americans devote a considerable amount of time to watching, discussing, and participating in athletics. And children will always emulate their favorite athlete. We invest so much in sports. Are we wrong to expect something in return from what we now realize is big business? Are we demanding too much from highly paid athletes by asking them to be good, decent human beings? Yes, sports are just games. And athletes are no better or no worse at being heroes or role models than we are. But sports and individual athletes have taught us important lessons about courage, overcoming adversity, defying the odds, and trying our best. Americans can no longer turn to sports and athletics as a sole source of inspiration and encouragement. Society must seek a balance between the value of sports and the critical issues and heroes of our times.
For a videocassette copy or transcripts of this program, please call 1-800-257-5126 or write Films for the Humanities and Sciences, Post Office Box 2053, Princeton, New Jersey 08543-2053.